Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, a podcast about stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. The Filmed Live Musicals website contains information on nearly 200 musicals that have been captured live. Check it out at filmedlivemusicals.com. And now, on with the show. Kimberly Faye Greenberg is an actor and Broadway expert. She is an industry coach and has worked as a dresser on over 20 Broadway shows. She was the first actress to play leading roles in 2 off-Broadway musicals at the same time, One Night with Fanny Brice and Danny and Sylvia. She has played Fanny Brice in 4 different shows and on 2 albums. Her one-woman show, Fabulous Fanny, The Songs and Stories of Fanny Brice, was filmed live in Connecticut and is currently available to stream. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It is absolutely my pleasure. So, can you tell us, who is Fanny Brice?
Well, Fanny Brice is a legend, a Broadway legend TV film as well, most famous during the 1920s, so the Roaring 20s. She started off, going through vaudeville, a little bit of burlesque, coming into fame in the Ziegfeld Follies, becoming the first comedian torch singer. So she's sort of the first female comedian of our time, and she kind of led the way for many others. She's also historically significant because she did a lot of songs with a lot of sort of Yiddish Jewish humor, which kind of brought that into the forefront as well, and sort of creating a niche for making fun of whatever your ethnicity is at the time. That is sort of her little claim to fame. She sort of has all her Yiddish stick that she does a lot when she sings, and she does her comedy. And then as well as moving into the later years of her life, she became Baby Snooks on the radio. Some people who are still alive today may have listened to her in the 1940s, early 1950s, and then she passed away in the 1950s from a stroke. She was only 59, so she was fairly young. But of course, she lives on today most prominently because Barbra played her in the Broadway show and in the movie musical Funny Girl and then Funny Lady. So most people, if you say Fanny Brice, that's sort of where they will know her from. But she did have such an iconic way of influencing American musical theater, Broadway, the comedians of today. Lots of her songs are part of the American Songbook. So she left a great impression as far as her life before she died.
And how did Fanny Brice come into your world?
Well, it's a very funny story, and I tell a little bit about it in my show. And I guess it's kind of been destined since birth. My middle name is Faye, so Faye, and I'm named after my great grandmother, whose name was Fanny. So there you go. And it was a pretty popular name at the time, but it's kind of funny how that would be the case that later on I'm playing this legendary woman named Fanny. So that was the first thing. In high school, as I started moving into musical theater, obviously as the Jewish girl, and I had some very, let's say, slight resemblance, more than slight really, to the real Fanny Brice. We look fairly alike if you put our 2 pictures together, which is very strange. And so my drama teacher at the time kind of said that if that's something that I would want to do, maybe kind of look at Funny Girl, and that's a role I could play as I got older. And then I went through college and left college, and as I was doing regional theater across the United States, I was doing a production of Fiddler on the Roof. And that same company was going to be doing Funny Girl a year from then. And they said they wanted to consider me to play Fanny. They were very interested. Can you look at the script and score and study that? And I was like, of course I know who this is. Dream role. People have been telling me to play this. So I spent a year studying Funny Girl, literally just studying Funny Girl. I, read all the books that were available. I went to there's a museum here in New York City, and you can listen to all these old radio broadcasts and old TV shows that you can't find anywhere else. So it's kind of like a library. And
Is that Paley Center?
It's the Paley Center, yes. It's an amazing resource. And of course, the New York Public Library is also an amazing resource, unlike any other. And I did so much research, and then guess what? Didn't book the part, didn't book it. Year later, didn't book the part, literally drove all my teachers crazy. All we ever did was learn funny girl material and go over the scenes, and I did not book the part. However, taking what I learned from that, I was able to apply that to an audition, to audition for a role that I was kind of pining for several years, which was Sylvia Fine, Danny Kaye's wife, in another musical called The Kid from Brooklyn. I booked that eventually. That led me to do the off-Broadway show, which was a little different, called Danny and Sylvia, the Danny Kaye musical. And then ironically enough, or the stars were aligning, the universe was aligning, and someone saw me in that show and said, hey, I've got this Fanny Brice show that I want to workshop. I would like you to play Fanny Brice. So there you go. So that led me to play Fanny many moons later. And of course, lots of things happened when I started playing Fanny. I was with the show. I wasn't with the show for reasons that didn't have anything to do with me. Then I was back with the show. Then we opened the show off Broadway. I made an album. I got the reviews, and then everything else started. I ended up with my own solo show that's very different from the off-Broadway version. I was in a Broadway show at the Liberty Theater, which is the only hidden theater on Broadway. And in the pandemic, obviously doesn't exist anymore. Mostly events happen in that space, but it does exist. So I was in a show called the Ziegfeld Midnight Frolics by a company called Speakeasy Dollhouse, where I played Fanny. And I've been workshopping another show called Ghostlight, where I also play Fanny. So it's kind of become like this whole life thing. It's very crazy. I play Jewish historical women now for a living, whether it's Fanny or not. And now, gratefully and thankfully so, which is how you saw me, long story short, my solo show is now streaming. So that's very exciting.
What led you to create your own solo show when you already had performed in another one-woman show about Fanny Brice?
Well, it wasn't something that I had planned, nor did I ever think that I would ever be doing any sort of solo show at all. That was never on my periphery. But having been in the off-Broadway show and people seeing that, I actually got several calls asking me for more. They wanted me to bring a show to their venue, but the off-Broadway show wasn't my show to bring, and they wanted something else. So I said, well, I can create you a show. And so I did, and I created.
Here's the research I spent a year doing.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. So you know how this goes. So yeah, I created a 45-minute version for one venue that wanted a version. And then I created a 2-hour version for another venue that wanted like a full show in like a 500-seat theater. And they both went off really well. And from there, I got other calls. And over the course of 4 or 5 years, we were sort of tweaking that show. And then now it's about 8 or 9 years later, and the show is kind of what it is now. I have a couple of different versions I offer out, and the streaming version is actually a little bit different than the live version, even though it's live, because I've cut a little bit off the video to make it more accessible for an at-home viewer to watch. So it's not quite so lengthy and no intermission and things like that. But so I guess I have like 3 versions of it now: an hour version, a 2-hour version, an hour and 15-minute version. But it was a long road. It certainly didn't happen overnight. And I just kind of figured it out as I went along. I had no idea what I was doing. And here we are.
Hey, that's super marketable. Any venue can pick a length of show that slots in so beautifully.
Yeah, that's why I did it that way, because I made a commitment to myself that if I was going to put in all this work, I surrounded myself with a great team of people. I didn't do it alone. And then I said, well, it's something I could have for a long time, and especially in a business where there's no certain outcome, and being able to support myself, hopefully, with it in some way and somehow. I was like, the best way to put it out there was to create a couple of different versions out of necessity, but also out of the fact that it would make it more viable for many different venues.
Yeah. When you were researching Fanny Brice, how much video footage of her is there?
Well, I mean, there are the movies that are still available that you can see right now on Netflix. Like Be Yourself is on one of those streaming services, and like the Ziegfeld Follies of whatever the year it is, the Great
1945,
something like that. Yeah, they have those as well. There's a couple of other films that she was in that are, still out there in public view. But what I found is there's a lot of other little things having to do with Baby Snooks. Like they recorded a lot of the radio segments that were never really aired as video, but those are still available to watch. There's some interviews that are available. So things like that. But also what's interesting, what I didn't even know until I started putting together my own solo show. And gratefully, the person who shared this knowledge with me wrote one of the most popular Fanny biographies. So he was able to share with me. But what I didn't know was that she had a memoir. She wrote a memoir, and
Ooh.
she did that because her her daughter, Frances, who married Ray Stark, who was the producer of Funny Girl, he asked Fanny to write this memoir so he could use it to pitch writing teams, to give to them to see what they would come up with in order to showcase her life as far as the musical is concerned. So her memoir is in a box under lock and key at the New York Public Library. And if you have a reason to read it, you can go read it. Put your
How
gloves
come it hasn't
on
been
and you get to
published?
read it.
That's
I don't
crazy.
know, but it is part of somebody's private estate and it was donated.
I
So I'm
see.
certain that it probably can't be published because it's somebody's private estate at this point. But it was
That's theater
so
history.
cool.
It should
Yeah.
be published. I
Yeah.
just finished reading Gloria Swanson's autobiography,
Oh, yeah.
which was first written by her seventh husband or something like that. She was married so many times, but it was absolutely fascinating. This insight into this world that doesn't exist anymore,
Yep.
and I'm sure Fanny Brice lived at in such an amazing time in Broadway history that Broadway's not like it was when she was on Broadway, and
Yeah,
the
it's
world
so
was not like
true.
it was.
It's so true. And I think that's what's been so great about my show is I've been able to take a lot of those stories and sort of incorporate them, the ones that people don't know about, which is kind of fun. I didn't want my show to be like this just listicle of facts throughout her life. That's not what I wanted to do. I really wanted to make it a story driven piece where get little snippets of things that happened to her that you wouldn't necessarily know. So I think that was the glory of being able to read that, which is so cool.
Is it a typed manuscript or
It is
handwritten?
it's a typed
Okay.
manuscript, like from a typewriter. It's pretty crazy.
And it's at the Billy Rose Library?
Yes, it's at the research section on the fourth floor, so you can go read it. Now you know my big secret. It's not really a secret, but it does exist.
I can't I'm actually I don't know what to say that has not been published. How is that possible?
Yeah,
That
I don't know, but I will say, I mean, Herb Goldman, who's the one who told me about this. He wrote the most popular Fanny Brice biography. And I will say, if you read his biography, it's pretty much on point with what was in the memoir.
mm,
You can't stray, if you don't have access to read her memoir, then I would say read Herb Goldman's book on Fanny Brice. And I think it will enlighten you.
it's as he quotes liberally, I'm guessing, from the manuscript.
Yeah, I think he takes a lot directly from the manuscript. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's to his credit because
Can we
people need
get
to
Miss
know this
Streisand
info.
involved? How do we get this thing published?
I don't know. She needs to listen to this podcast.
Yes. Oh my god.
Listen, I've been trying to meet Barbra for many moons, and I have come very close. I don't know if you saw my Barbra video I made, but I have introduced myself to her, so she knows who I am. So I will say that. I mean, I could share my little story, but I don't know if that's something you want to
Oh,
talk
I would love to
about.
hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's my little Barbra story. So I've always liked to think, in my own mind, to like my own ego, to think that she probably has heard about me in some semblance. Because if you Google Fanny Brice, there's only a few people that pop up, and it's basically me and her. And the reviews from my off-Broadway show were in the New York Times and the Associated Press. And if you read the Times, she would have seen that. So I would like to have thought. But anyway, when I was this was like a couple of years ago when I was working at Something Rotten on Broadway. Barbra Streisand was doing a talk back at the Winter Garden Theater, and I didn't know that that was happening. It was an interview, I think, for her new album. They were
Mhm.
inviting a very small audience, and a friend who, knows me as Fanny and is a dresser. She asked if that was something that I would want to go do. Obviously, I said yes. When I found out that I was for sure going to be able to go, another friend of mine, smart friend, because I don't know why I didn't think to do it, she was like, well, this is your chance to meet Barbra. How can you meet Barbra? And I was like, well, I guess I could drop something off for her at the stage door. She's like, yes, 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 you should drop roses. I said, oh, okay. She could drop roses and a little note, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, they need to be yellow roses, like in Funny Girl when Nick Arnstein gives her yellow roses. So I was like, okay. So, I get really nervous. Oh, you're getting like all excited and verklempt.
I'm feeling,
Okay.
I'm like, my heart is racing for you.
So here's what happened. And it was a whole big deal and like made me really extremely nervous because I don't do things like this as far as like I'm not a big like swooning over fans kind of thing. But I was like, well, this is my one opportunity. I should grab it. So, and I know working on Broadway shows, if you send no people, if anyone who's listening, if you send somebody something at the stage door, they will get it. So just know that. So I got a dozen yellow roses and I wrote out a little card that basically said something to the effect of, I'm the other Fanny Brice go-to gal. And I've been a great, obviously, admirer of your work, and you are extremely instrumental in me and my journey of playing Fanny Brice. And I just wanted to reach out and, introduce myself. And I attached my CD. So there you go. So it was like a dozen yellow roses, my Fabulous Fanny Brice CD, and a card. And then I dropped it off at the stage door. And I have this fabulous sailor outfit that I wear. And if anyone knows Funny Girl specifically, in that beginning of the first act, she has like the sailor suit on as Fanny. So I have like a sailor-ish suit that I just wear because I like it. And so I wore that day in honor. And I was sitting in the audience with a friend, and we were just sitting there, la-di-da. And maybe 10 minutes later, I look up and I was like, something looks off of the stage. And, Barbra, I'm sure, had a huge say in what her stage looks like. And it was very much set up for, a picture moment for the paper or whatever they were doing publicity wise. And big flowers, things that would stand out on like a stage that's seating like 2,000 people in the audience. Nothing small and chintzy. And I look at the table and there's like this had been brought out probably as I was sitting there and I wasn't paying attention. On the table was this vase with like these dozen yellow roses. And next to the water, and it was very much probably her chair. I could tell it was probably going to be her chair where she was going to be sitting. And I look up and I just was like, no, really? And I look at my friend and I was like, and I had taken a snapshot of the photo of that I'd given her. And I said, I think those are my flowers on the stage. Look at the photo. Look at the flowers. And then the show hadn't started yet, so I got up out of my chair because we were kind of in the back of the orchestra, and I was like, do, and I walked to the stage and I looked. They were my flowers on the stage. They specifically brought them out and put them on the table next to where she sat with her water. So my flowers were out there. They were definitely my flowers. And then in the middle of the show, like I'm still verklempt. I'm still like, oh my God, that happened. Because she had exact say of what happens on that stage. So she said to her assistant, put those on the stage, you know what I mean, after she got the card or whatever. And in the middle of the show, they were asking her about playing Funny Girl in the theater. And, this is a typical question that an actor would get, did you get bored doing all those shows? And her response was, well, sometimes it's human nature if you're doing something over and over again. She goes, however, on the stage, they had these fake artificial plants that I would, look at as I was standing waiting for the scene to go by. And I would just kind of look at them and they would be dusty and I'd wipe the dust off. And I would think, how could people not, remember to dust? And she had been looking at my flowers like the whole interview, just like kind of looking at them and touching them and blah, 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 blah. And then she looks at my flowers and then she looks out at the audience and she says, but these flowers are very real, or these roses are very real. And it was kind of like a nod to me. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to take it that way because she didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? And especially this little teeny, like some random comment of these flowers are very real, like looking out at people. You know what I mean? So I took that
I
as
think I would have started crying.
I was like, I think I fell over in my chair. I was like, total acknowledgement. You know what I mean? And then the end came and I left the theater and I went to the stage door and the stage door at the end of the show is usually crowded with fans. So, I didn't get to talk to her and she rushes into her little car to drive away. But
Yeah.
as they're driving down Broadway traffic moves really slowly, and me in my sailor suit. So I just like walk next to the car for about a block or two until it turns off and then it goes away. But I was just like, I hope, I hope that my CD is either sitting on her living room, table somewhere or her assistant's table somewhere. But it's nice to know that that acknowledgement actually really did happen.
That is so beautiful. You will meet
Yeah.
one day.
I
You
hope
have
so.
to.
I hope
You just
so.
have to.
I hope so. I mean, we're like one degree apart. I know several people that know her or have met her or have worked with her in some capacity. So I do hope that I will get the opportunity. If nothing else, I would love to sing with her. Like that would make me so happy. Like, can you imagine? I'd die. I
I
wouldn't
have dry
die,
mouth
but
just
like
thinking about it.
I'm schwitzing. But anyway, yeah. So there's my story. It's very long-winded.
That is the most beautiful Barbara story. As a longtime Barbara fan, Hello Dolly is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just so glorious. I love her so dearly. She's one of the few performers who is on my bucket list that I haven't seen yet. I've
I
seen
saw
Liza,
her.
I've seen
Oh my
Aladdin's
god,
Morissette,
yes.
I've seen Patty, I've seen Bernadette.
Yes.
I need to
If
see
you if
Barbara
you ever if you ever can see her, I saw her concert the last time in New York and it was really spectacular.
at the Barclays Center.
Yeah, it was spectacular.
It was like one of the few times I was performing in the city, and I was like, "Come on, the one time I'm performing, and I'm missing Barbara."
Okay, she'll come around again. I'm certain of
Torture.
it.
I sure hope so. So you created this beautiful one woman show, and you've been performing it all over the U.S. What led you to film it a couple of years ago?
Well, interestingly enough, I would have had no, ESP or knowing that we would be in this situation at this point. So, whenever I had the opportunity, and especially since I was local within the tri state, I was able to hire a friend to come in and videotape it, who I knew was an excellent videographer. So, that's just how that happened. I like to video things when I have the opportunity, which is very rare because then I can, use it in some form of a promo or to look back. I like to look back on the videos if I don't have a show for 6 months, and I can look back on the video as a reminder of, oh, I need to do this or think about this, whatever the case might be. So
Mm.
basically, it was just for my own library, and I got the permission of the venue. And then when quarantine happened, I actually didn't occur to me to use the video to share. A friend of mine who's a producer, I'll give a shout out to Ashley Kate Adams. She's her studio is AKA Studio Productions, and we were just having a chat, and she had said to me, you should really, if it's a really good quality video, you should think about streaming that. And so that's kind of how that came to be. And I zhuzhed it up with some credits and some openings and did a little editing just because it needed to have that for the stream. I felt to be, I wanted it to be make a really strong impact and keep viewers' attention. I know that most of the time we can only sit through like a movie length, so that's why I kept it to like an hour and 15. And plus, it gives the audience their own unique show. It's a little different than what you would see in person, which I think is kind of cool. So that way, if you want to see my show again, it wouldn't actually be the exact same thing again. I mean, live, seeing it live, it wouldn't be the exact same thing. So that's kind of how that came to be. And then I didn't know anything about streaming. Luckily, my show falls under an ASCAP license, and that was very helpful for streaming it on YouTube. I'm actually going to be moving it to, I don't know when this podcast is going to be airing, but I'm actually looking to move it to a platform called Stellar, which is
Mm-hmm.
more
The Gold Star
accessible.
platform.
Yes, the Gold
Yes.
Star platform, which they've been so nice in helping to sell my show. But now they have this beautiful new platform to stream. So I'm going to be moving it there because they too have the license that I need in order to be able to stream and not have to worry about that, because I want to make sure that everyone's getting paid, which is so ultra important. I have a whole team, you know what I mean? I want to make sure everyone is getting something from this because that makes me feel good too. You know what I mean? During this time, especially, I want to make sure everyone's getting what they need or have been contracted for. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that has happened, and just figuring it out. I mean, the whole, filming of live musicals is such a new thing, which is like so great with your podcast and your database of being able to list them now, it's going to grow exponentially so quickly. And there's so many different things out there now. It's kind of amazing to see, but it's really cool how we can just bring the theater now into the home. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So that's what I love.
What really excites me about this topic is that we've been filming theater since we invented cameras.
Yep.
Like it's been there since the beginning, and we've been filming live theater and musicals and broadcasting them. The first broadcast was actually in 1944. No, when did the war break out? 1939. So the first broadcast was like 1938 in the UK. And it's taken until now for it to become like COVID has made it acceptable in inverted commas.
Right.
But it gets, I'm so excited because I can't keep up with the content. There is so like, whereas before it was like, oh, every like 6 months I'd get like a new show, it would be exciting, and
Yeah.
now it's like six every week.
Right. I know. It's like crazy how just in a matter of like a month, it's been a lot more people coming, bringing their show
Yeah.
out into the open on streaming, which is kind of cool. And it's great. It's hard because as far as like as an actor, I'm a member of Actors Equity, and that puts a lot of stipulations. Like I know I get a lot of questions from those who are not in the business of how come I can't then just go watch, the Broadway musical of Ain't Too Proud. I want to see that stream, and how come I just can't press a button and that can happen? But what's because of union rules that can happen. But what's so cool about the time that we're living in is I consider myself like a multi hyphenate, somebody who does many things in the arts industry. We're all creating our own work, complementing our performing career or offstage career, whatever it is that we do. And so it may not be those big shows like those Hamiltons, but it's all these other cool things that are not as easily accessible that we're now able to put online to stream, that I think is what's going to be integral to the growth of the arts, especially now since theater isn't going to be able to come back anytime soon. I think this is going to like be changing the game like forevermore kind of thing.
Yeah. And it means that, we can access shows like yours that I might not have ever seen before because
Right.
I wasn't in New York yet when you were first performing it here.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And like now, people in Australia can access it, and vice versa. We can access shows that we were limited to not being able to see by geography or cost or accessibility. Now streaming has changed that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's like bringing theater to anyone really who has some way to stream, which is kind of cool. Again, it's like every time I see a musical movie being made or something, I'm always cheering that because that's still helping our onstage, profession. It's really helping us to continue to grow the musical theater movement, or theater movement as a whole. Because again, we tend to like be forgotten about. TV and film is really important, and I'm happy to be part of that as well. But that's such a everybody knows about that, but they don't know as much about theater. So it's nice that we can have more influence now on what it is and what we do and the impact we can have right now.
And pre-pandemic times, whenever a movie musical was released, if that musical was also playing on Broadway or wherever, the ticket sales went up, even if it was a movie version, not the filmed live version.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to see what happens post-pandemic and when we open up again, what how streaming will boost ticket sales or create
Yeah,
interest in shows.
it should be interesting to see how that happens. I know for me, my fear was, well, if I broadcast my show, who's going to want to pay to see it in person? Because when I book it at a venue, for me, that's where my payday happens because that's my one show every 6 months or whatever is like a really nice payday where I can actually pay bills with that. So that was my thinking. But then I did realize, because if you're looking at, then people started telling me, well, that's not the case. If they see it online, then they're absolutely going to want to be in the room with you later on,
And even more so knowing that it's a different show, that there
yes,
is more to see when we go see it in person.
exactly, exactly. So then that's kind of what led me down the path of being less fearful about that and more of just like, let's just put it out there and get new people to watch who I can't, access now. So that's it's exciting. I found you. It's so cool.
That's this is what makes me love doing this so much. I get to find out about these awesome shows and meet incredible people that are making all this cool art all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious why you chose, I'm guessing it has something to do with licensing, why you chose to release the show on specific dates and with like specific times rather than like why not just upload it to YouTube
Oh, okay.
or
So,
on a
well,
yeah, an open source kind of
so like
site.
an on-demand kind of thing, like
Yeah.
more like you could access it anytime, any day. So
Yeah.
yes, it is a licensing issue. So you need a different license to be able to do that. It's all been a learning curve. So I mean, I knew about the license that I needed to just for the well, no, actually, that's not true. When I went to go looking to stream my show, I knew what I needed to have it on stage in an open environment in the theater. Then when it came to streaming, then I had to do a bunch of research. And then under ASCAP found out, okay, well, if you show it on a YouTube platform, then you're good. However, or anything that's kind of like a YouTube. Vimeo is not the case. Vimeo doesn't have any licensing, so you have to make sure that you get your licensing yourself if you're on a Vimeo
Mm.
platform. But to educate your listeners, if you have a product that's on demand, then you need an additional license called a sync license. So that's something else that you need as far as like your music or using like copyrighted material. So that's an additional thing which I don't have, but could get if I wanted to. And so that's sort of on a more long term thing. But I know that I kind of like having my show on certain days and times. And what I'm going to like with Stellar is I'm going to be able to do it more often because they're taking up a lot of the slack of what I have to do behind the scenes because it's not as easy as me just pressing a button. There's a lot more to it than that. It's like, I get an email that somebody bought a ticket, got to go send them the link, then I got to send the confirmation email, then got to press play in the day, make sure it's streaming right. And then, there's a lot more to it than you would think. But I like having set days and times because it becomes a theatrical event. And that's kind of, what I do is creating a theatrical event is more exciting to me than on demand. However, if I can eventually do it on demand, I may. So we'll see. I'm not so certain. I kind of like where this is. I just would like there to be more accessible time. So it's not like
Mhm.
maybe I do like a Broadway show schedule where you see it like, you could see this Tuesday through Saturday at 8 p.m. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
we'll
love that.
see. We'll see.
Yeah. I think there is something to be said for creating an event. That's something that Broadway On Demand has been doing. That rather than just releasing a show and having it available, although they do that, they're first doing these like premieres where like
Right.
8 o'clock on a Friday night, and then it's like like you say, it's an event, and people are live tweeting, and there's like a
Yes.
sense of, even though we're all in our own living rooms, there's a sense of community and going to the theater.
Exactly, exactly. So I kind of like that idea to continue that. So we'll see. At this point, that's my plan is just to continue that, to keep adding dates for your listeners. I don't know when this is going to be up, but right now it's streaming through October 18th, but it's definitely going to be streaming through the holidays into the new year. At least it'll be streaming until the pandemic is over and we're out of quarantine at this point. So
Yeah.
I'll keep adding dates. But whoever's watching and looking for dates might see an increase in dates if they continue to check back and they're not available to stream on a certain time or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of how that's going.
Oh, that's awesome. And we'll make sure we'll have show links in the show notes and on
Amazing,
the Film Love Musicals website so that people can
amazing. Thank
go
you.
and book tickets, because I learned so much about Fanny Brice. I've obviously watched Funny Girl many times and, you know, knew that kind of that story, that sanitized story, as I've read that you've called it, the kind of the glossed over version.
Yeah,
And
and
like
I can take a really quick second to say the reason they did that was because Nick Arnstein was still alive, and they didn't want to, forgive the word, piss him off and, like, not actually be able to do Funny Girl, so which is why it was, like, a watered down version.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
It's I The lives of these people, like married 3 times and like in and out of debt and having to hustle all that, like it's so fascinating and harrowing at the same time.
I know, I know. Well, we all still do that today. I mean, we're not doing it at the level they were when their actual story, but, still trying to make it work.
What's your favorite thing about playing Fanny Brice?
um, I'll say the fact that having played her for so long, it really has given me as a human more permission to just like have so much chutzpah and like not be afraid in my journey and things like that. I think she taught me that, which is kind of cool. I get into that in a very little tiny point in the end of my show if you watch it. But I think that's the biggest influence. And then I think the second thing is it's opened up so many opportunities. I would never have imagined this. I never sought this out. This kind of just came to me and I went with it and I said yes. So there's a testament to those who are listening to say yes. If you can, say yes, even though it's really scary, say yes. But again, in saying yes and in going on this crazy journey, like I've met so many cool people. I've booked a lot of other really neat jobs that I would never have imagined doing. I get to talk to cool people and like share her story and share my story and keep her legacy alive, which is ultra important in the scheme of the theater world.
Mm.
So I would say that. And then of course, singing her songs and telling her stories is really cool. That's like the icing on the cake kind of thing as a performer.
When you are performing the show, there's so many torch songs. It's a big sing. How
Yeah.
do you look after your voice while you're performing?
I think I'm pretty used to it now because of the fact that it's kind of so in my body from like 8 or 9 years of work. But I will say when I'm doing a show, I have to, like you would do in any Broadway show if you're doing a show 8 times a week, and especially when I'm doing my show, is I'm usually doing a lot of rehearsal leading up to it, and then there's like a travel day the day before, and then the tech is all happens before you do the show at night, and the next day is another travel day. So it's a lot of physical as well as mental. So I'm always just trying to rest my voice as much as possible before I'm doing a show. And then, sing out Louise during the show and then done. But I will say, Fanny had lungs of steel, and I will say I have a little bit of lungs of steel as well. I'm lucky that way. It's just in just me and my vocal structure. So I'm grateful for that. I guess that's really it at this point.
Meant to be.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not singing Wicked. I'm singing like big, belty, traditional American musical theater songs, which is definitely a different kind of sing. Like if you were to ask me to sing Wicked, that would not be something that I would be doing. So that would be a whole different thing. So I would say for what works for me is very different than what might work for somebody else.
Well, there's a whole other topic about how songwriting has changed and how writing for women and female characters has changed over the 20th century, and that the belt has just gotten
Completely.
higher and higher and
Yes,
higher.
very. It's much more about vocal pyrotechnics than it is about this telling a story, and also I think it was more so about like in the 40s and 50s on Broadway, and I think Fanny was integral in this too. Early on, is like singing from your own voice. Like when you close your eyes, you should be able to tell who it is that's singing specifically. And I think right now, and it's just the nature of musical theater at this point, um, it's more about the songs and the lyrics and the tone, like a Disney tone or like a Wicked tone or kinds of things like that. So it's been more encouraged to like sound like Adina, like you know what I mean, be able to sing like that and sound like that. But and then you close your eyes so you don't know who's singing necessarily. You're hearing the song itself. This is what they want
Mm,
you to be hearing. So I think that's a lot of how contemporary musical theater is very different than traditional musical theater.
hmm
If
Do
that
you
makes
have a? I was going to ask favorite song, but that's like everybody asks that. What's the song that you most connect to of Fanny's that you like to
Oh
sing?
my God. Well, this isn't even a Fanny song. It's the "Don't Rain on My Parade" from Funny Girl. I That was my audition go-to song for years and years. It became my audition go-to song when I didn't book that Funny Girl. And it became my audition go-to song, probably because I was like, well, I'm gonna do it anyway, even if it's in an audition. But I that song has luckily, when I walk into an audition and I sing it, I don't really do it anymore. I've kind of moved on because most people in New York and the Broadway community know that I do that. So I sing other things now. But it was cool because when I was singing it, like I recall I had my final callback for the Broadway show People in the Picture, and everybody from the entire creative team and casting was in the room. And I sang Parade as my first song because that's what got me in that room. And everybody clapped after and was like so excited and like, oh yeah, and I just couldn't. I just did this whole big moment because you're not seeing me on the podcast, but like everyone was like cheering, and I just that's been just such a cool journey of being able to share that with others because I have a very unique take, I think, on that song itself. So I think that's my favorite tune of Fanny's, even though it's not Fanny's.
It's a technicality.
It's a technicality.
It channels her.
It does channel her, so much
Yes.
so.
Okay, so I have a series of quick questions. I don't want you to think about them too much. Whatever comes to mind is good, and there are no wrong answers.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a favorite musical?
Les Mis.
Oh, interesting. What do you have a favorite filmed live musical?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I mean, I enjoyed Hamilton. I'm trying to think a lot filmed live musical besides my own. Can I say my own?
You
That
can
sounds
indeed.
terrible. Okay, my own.
Excellent.
I feel like I haven't seen a lot of the live musicals yet. Like I've enjoyed She Loves Me. I enjoyed Holiday Inn. Um, but those were also a lot of musicals that I saw in person as well. So it's hard for me to say that those are my favorites when I've seen them on the stage.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you can experience both.
Yes. You know what I will say though, what has left an indelible impression is Into the Woods from the original Broadway cast because I saw that when I was really young and that left a huge impression. So I probably would say that if anything was to be my favorite, that probably would just because of the impression that it made
That
on
sits
me.
in my heart because I think that was the very first filmed live musical I saw. I grew up in Australia, and Broadway may as well have been the moon. It was so far
Yeah.
away,
Yeah.
and it was my first introduction into Sondheim and to this world of Broadway and musical theater. And it's such a good capture. It was
Oh, it's such
intentionally
a
filmed
good.
like a movie.
Oh my
So
god,
it's
it was so
yeah.
good. Yet it was on the stage and it was so good. Yeah. I'll never forget that. I didn't grow up with theater either, and we were not a theater going family really. My first musical I saw was Oliver. Again, when I was fairly young, but we didn't really do that kind of thing. So seeing that on PBS was like the world was opening. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Well, we had lots of access to theater in Sydney, but Broadway was very coveted, and it's like the bee's knees and the height of theater. And to see this show filmed live, and like there's an audience there and they're reacting, and it's Bernadette Peters and Chipsine and Joanna Glee, like it's so awesome. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
absolutely,
I'm with you on that
absolutely.
one. So, filmed theater is often called like a hybrid between theater and film. It's not exactly theater and it's not exactly film. So, what should we call it?
Well, I've been calling mine like a theatrical experience because again, you're not in the theater, you're at home, but you're still experiencing theater and you're still getting the emotional tie from it, I think, for the most part. I mean, you're not getting the energy, but if the show is really well done, I think you're still getting that emotional pull to whatever it is that you're watching. So I don't know. I guess a theatrical experience, maybe. That's what I've been saying. That's how I've been kind of equating it to.
It makes a lot of sense. I I'm
Yeah,
like
yeah.
collecting all these little what should we call it? And I'm going to collate
Ah,
them all one day.
that sounds good. That sounds good. I'm sure that eventually there will be a term for it, but I
Yes.
don't know what that's going to be. I mean, it's not gonna be like the streaming theater, you know what I mean? It's not gonna be that. So
Yeah,
I don't
there's
know.
really fun articles in like old film daily magazines from the 20s when talkies first came about. And there was like this crisis in the industry. What do we call talking pictures? And there's all these like bizarre like hybrids between like the word audio and the word film or cinema,
Mm-hmm.
and they just had no idea what to call it. So I feel like we're at that phase with filmed theater where we're not sure what to call it, and someone's going to come up with it and it's going to
Yeah,
be like,
it's
that's
definitely
it,
gonna
that's
have
it.
its it's definitely gonna have its own name because I think too, especially as we continue to move forward, and I think we're going. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I have a feeling that because COVID is going to continue to be here for a while, and unfortunately, that might mean that theater may not be here for a while to come. I think we're going to see more of like the bigger Broadway musicals doing more of this, like more of like the Hamilton, and I know Diana is coming out next, so I think we're going to see more of that. So there's definitely going to have to be some sort of other name to it
Yeah.
that they're going to have
I
to
want
come up
them to
with.
find a way to put a socially distanced audience in those rooms, because I
Yeah,
think you need the live audience. I think it makes a huge difference. Otherwise, you're just making TV, which is fine, but it's not theater. You
yeah,
need an
it's true.
audience.
It's true. 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 Yeah, because their energy does help serve the viewer's energy when they're watching it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on bootlegs?
I will totally admit that I have watched bootlegs, but only for educational purposes, not for sharing. Like if I'm going in for a part, if there's a bootleg, then I will definitely look at it, but I don't support it in place of going to see the live show. I mean, we do record shows for educational purposes. You know what I mean? We record Broadway shows for so that the understudy can watch. We record Broadway shows, or theatrical experience. Like I recorded my show so that I could have it for my library in case I ever needed it. So we do. That's just a thing that happens. But if you can go see and support the live version, I'm speaking specifically of a bootleg, not something that was offered out to actually stream, then do that. Absolutely do that.
What do you wish had been filmed?
Oh, goodness. God, I wish we had so much of what has existed if it was filmed. I mean, I'll say this, and only those of us in New York have access to it, which is most Broadway shows get filmed, but they get put into the New York Public Library film and tape. So you can't actually have access to it unless you have a reason to have access to it again for an audition for educational purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I almost wish that at this point in time there would be some way to like release all of that so we could all enjoy it. But we
Yeah.
can't. But I wish like if everything could be on recorded tapes somehow legally, that would be really cool as far
Bless
as a
the
live
lawyers that would
performance.
have to be involved in the
Yeah,
negotiation.
it's too it will never happen. But,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's hard because as a union member, it takes a lot to record something. So it's just not like you can set up a video camera and just record it at any time with audience. You just can't do that. So, but it would be nice if there was a way to make that happen, but at
Yeah.
this point,
I think the pandemic is going to shift that
I
attitude. It's
think
going
so
to
too.
become easier. And the way digital cameras as well have made filming a lot easier.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think also from the income standpoint too, as far as, like, performers and backstage personnel and everybody who needs an income as well, that helps that if we can figure out a way to actually realistically make that happen and support everybody. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, I
Absolutely.
don't know. I don't know, it'll be interesting. It's all such a new thing. I mean, it's not new, like you said, it's not a new idea, but it's new as far as the public having so much access to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything of Fanny Brice's that you would love to, like, if you could go back in time and have a recording of it and be able to watch it today, is there anything particularly that you would like to see?
The only things I would love to see, which there are, at least I don't know any of them. I would love to actually see her in the actual follies in the show itself. Like there's remakes of what some of those were in like the movies and stuff, but I would love to actually be able to see it happening on stage in real time. There are other random clips from the Follies, so I'm sure that they exist somewhere in somebody's closet somewhere. But that would be so cool just to see what we can hear, actually see it. Like they were all on record, or we hear like sound clips or something that somebody has. But I would love to actually see what that actually looked like in person. Yeah, that would be my thing. Take me back to the Follies just so I could actually see it.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
What would you like to see filmed in the future?
Oh, goodness. Well, for me, I just across the board, I would love for more stuff to be legally filmed. So whatever that could be, then I would love that. And also I think would be cool just because I've done a lot of immersive theater, and immersive theater's kind of coming back. If we could figure out a way to film all of that kind of stuff as well would be cool, especially when we're watching it on a computer, because then all that live stuff, immersive stuff from all the different things going on could be edited together to create an even new piece of theatrical art event,
Yeah.
whatever we're going to call it. You know what I mean? Like it would be
Yes.
cool. There's just so many options. We have so many capabilities now of recording. Zoom of all things. I mean, it's so crazy how we could just record something that we're not even in the same room. So I would love to see just more of everything. Let's saturate it even more.
I'm with you. More theater.
Yes, exactly.
Where can we find you online, Kimberly?
So you can find me at Kimberly Faye, Faye Greenberg.com, and you can find my solo Fanny Brice show at Fabulous Fanny Show.com. And Fanny is Fanny, just so some people spell it a little bit differently, so I spell it with a Y. So please check that out there. All my streaming show information is on both my websites, actually. So if you go to my Kimberly Faye Greenberg website, it'll take you to my Fanny Brice show website. So either way, you'll find it. And then last but not least, you can also check out my other actor coach endeavor at thebroadwayexpert.com. We didn't really get into that here today, but feel free to check what that might be out as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. This was so much fun, and I have learned more about Fanny Brice, and I think I need to watch your show again.
Love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Filmed Live Musicals is a labor of love, and we'd like to thank everyone who makes it possible. Thank you to our patrons Josh Brandon, Mercedes Esteban, Jesse Rabinowitz and Brenda Goodman, Al Monaco, David and Catherine Rabinowitz, and Beck Twist for your support. If you'd like to support Filmed Live Musicals, please like and review on your podcast app. Find us on Twitter at Musicals on Screen and on Facebook at Filmed Live Musicals. If you'd like to support the site financially, you can find us at patreon.com/musicalsonscreen. No matter what level you're able to pledge, you'll receive early access to written content and early access to this very podcast. Visit www.filmedlivemusicals.com to learn more. Thanks for listening.